Okay, so for this video, we're going to talk about VLOOKUP and some of the other functions. I do want to remind you that in Blackboard, in that How to MS Office Helps area, you do have If VLOOKUP Payment Help sheet that'll come up, and it'll show you kind of how to use these functions and give you an example of walking through it. So don't forget that those are out there for you. All right, so let's go ahead and head back out to Excel. In this particular sheet, what we're looking for, it says, identify the animal whose speed in miles per hour is 40. Okay. I have a pretty small list here. I can come over here and say, okay, 40, looks like it's the ostrich. Okay, so that I could just type ostrich. But in this instance, what we really want to do is we want to utilize the lookup function. And the lookup function really is lets us take a particular value and go find it somewhere else and bring back a value that's related to it. So as you're walking through, you think about, okay, so however what you're doing a lookup function, when you set up your table for the lookup function, you always want to make sure that what you're looking up is in the far left side if we're doing a VLOOKUP, or in the top row, in the first column of the table if we're doing a VLOOKUP, and the first row of a table if you're doing an HLOOKUP. Just makes it that's the way the functions work. All right, so let's look at what VLOOKUP does. VLOOKUP actually is here in our lookup and reference area. You can see there's a lot of different values here. So I'm going to go ahead and instead of doing it here, I'm going to go ahead and do it through the insert function. And we know it's a VLOOKUP because basically I'm telling you that. Okay, so we're going to use a VLOOKUP. Say OK. And VLOOKUP, it says, looks for a value in the leftmost column of a table, okay, and returns a value in the same row from the column that you specify. By default, the table needs to be sorted in ascending order. Okay, so that's fair. We can do that. All right, so say OK. Now, our table is sorted in ascending order, so that's good. The value we want to look up is in the left column, and then the second column is the value we want to return. Okay, so we've got everything we need for our VLOOKUP to work correctly. All right, so it says the first here, the lookup value. What I want you to think about when you're thinking about lookup value is it says it's the value to be found in the first column and can be a value, reference, or text string. Lookup really is, what am I looking for? What thing do I need to be looking up? Well, in this instance, I want to know what animal has a speed of 40. Okay, so that H4 needs to be right there in that lookup value. For my table array, this is where am I going to look it up at? So first one, this is what am I looking up? Where am I looking it up at? Okay. When I highlight the table, do not highlight the titles of the table. Okay. You only highlight where the data is at. In this particular instance, we only have 2 columns, and so we've got column 1 and column 2. Now, if I were going to be copying this down, I would want to make sure this table array had absolute referencing, but in this instance, I'm not going to be copying it down. I'm just using it in one cell. Okay. This one confuses a lot of people, where it says column index number. What that means is which column am I bringing back? Okay, and it says number. Okay, so here I have speed is in column 1. Animal is in column 2. So if I think about it, this is what I'm looking up. This is where I'm looking it up. This is what I want to bring back. So in this instance, I want to bring back column 2. Okay. Now, VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP have a thing called range lookup. If you leave this blank, it will try and interpolate the data or estimate the data between 2 values. That means true gives you the nearest value. If you know you want to bring back an exact value, then you want to say false here. Again, it is an optional field, but if you know that you want it to be an exact match, go ahead and put false. Okay, so say OK, and you'll see it says ostrich. Now, I'm going to come in here. Notice here, what if I change that to 50? Let's see if I put 50 there. Notice it came back with lion. So it went and looked up 50 and brought back lion. Okay, so I think you can see how that would be very valuable in lots of data. Okay, I'm also going to do something here. I'm going to insert a column right here. And notice now, if I come here and I look at my VLOOKUP, it's still bringing back column 2. Is that okay? Absolutely, that's okay, because my table now starts in column B. That doesn't matter because my table of values, this is column 1, this is column 2. So it doesn't matter where it's located in the actual Excel data sheet. You're only looking at the representation of the columns in the table that you have. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at this next VLOOKUP. I'm going to move over a little bit here in our sheet. Got several VLOOKUPs to look at. Here's our VLOOKUP function number 2. In this instance, we've got Teddy Duncan, Austin Moon. You can see some of those same folks over here. Now what it is it says we're going to use a function in, actually looks like that says H4. I'll change it in the spreadsheet for you guys. That looks like that should be I4. So I will go ahead and make that modification for you. Bring back a function it says in I4 that will consult the table to the left and find Teddy Duncan's salary. Okay, so we're going to find out what his hourly rate is. Okay, so what do I know about this? Well, what is in my table? What's in my table is their name. Okay, and I'm going to want to bring back the hourly rate. So in my VLOOKUP, I know I just used it, so I'm going to just go here to recently used. In my VLOOKUP, I'm going to be looking up the employee name. Okay, where am I looking it up at? I'm looking it up right over here from A4 through B12. Now, this time I'm going to be copying it down. So I'm going to make sure that both of those are absolute reference. If I haven't clicked out, it'll automatically do the entire array. If not, if it didn't give both of them to you that way, just click over on into the other one and make sure that they're both absolute reference. Okay. The column number I'm going to bring back this time, the employee name is in column 1. The hourly rate is in column 2. All right, and I want it to bring back an exact value. Okay. Let's take a look at that. Okay, Teddy makes $12.50. Let's go down and see what happens. I got all of them there. Look at that. So we were able to pull that out. Now, I'm going to undo this, and I'm going to show you what would happen if I didn't make that absolute, okay? So I'm going to highlight this right here, and I'm going to take that absolute referencing off. And then I'm going to copy it down and show you guys what it does. Okay. Notice down here, Teddy Duncan's here again because he worked in week 2. Austin Moon here. Because what happened was our table is all the way down here now because we've moved it down as we move down. Okay, so that's kind of the reason it's so important for you to make sure you've got your absolute referencing right. Okay, I'm going to undo that and undo that and go back to where we've got our absolute referencing, and we'll put that back out there. All right, again, we've got an issue with the coloration. So I'm just going to do a format painter and format paint those so they look the same as the other one. There we go. And now we've got a nice format painter there. Okay. You could have done it with any of the columns, but that works. All right, so making sure that we use that absolute and relative reference appropriately. Let's look at VLOOKUP number 3 here. Now in this one, I'm going to show you how to use what's called a named range. A lot of times people like to do this with their lookup table because it's so much easier than worrying about having that absolute reference. Okay, so select the range of cells A4 through B12. So we're going to get those, and then we are going to name it political party. Over here under the formulas tab, you have an ability to do names. Okay, so right here where it says define the name, I'm going to define the name and I'm going to call it political party. One of the key things you have to do when you're naming a range is it cannot have any spaces. Okay, so you could put either an underscore there or just put the two words together. And it's going to reference A4 through B12. Okay, and the reason we do that is now when I create my function over here, I can actually do my VLOOKUP. Let me just come over and do it again. Recently used, I know I've used it. Okay, I'm my VLOOKUP, I'm going to be looking up the party code, right? Because that's what's here. I'm going to look up that party code. Okay, I'm going to look it up. Now, if I've got that table named, I can just say, go look that up in political party. Okay, and I don't have to worry about whether or not it's absolute referencing or whatever, because the table itself is named. Okay, and we'll be bringing back column 2, and we want that to be an exact value. If I can type, there we go, false. And there's our exact value. Okay, and it looks like here I've got some extra indents. I'm going to pull those indents back. There we go. Looks like that'll work. And then I can copy that down. Okay, and let's see, let's go ahead and take, I'm going to take that and format paint it and pull that over here. And now we've got that information. It looks like I also need to have a left border. Let me go ahead, I'm sorry, a right border. Go ahead and put a right border there. And now I've got each of those looked up. And every single one of them is going to reference the political party named range. Like I said, a lot of people like to do the named range that way. It just makes it a little bit easier to do that. So you're certainly welcome to do that on any of your spreadsheets. Well, not the ones you're getting graded by, but as you begin to work these later. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at this one. This one says create a function in cell G4 to identify the appropriate miles for the trip to visit Mary Poppins. Okay, so our client's going to be Mary Poppins, and it says copy the function down to the remaining cells. Consider if absolute or relative references are appropriate before copying. Okay, so I'm going to say equals that's a little more complex to do it that way. Let me just go ahead and use my insert function, or my recently used here. So I'm going to use my VLOOKUP. What am I looking up? Okay, I'm looking up now, where am I going, right? Because that's what's here in my first column. I'm looking at where am I going? Where am I looking it up? I'm looking it up in A2 through B8. Oops, I did not click out. Do you guys see that I'm still in my lookup value here? Got to be careful with that. Make sure you click into that next row down there before you highlight. There we go. Now, A2 through B8. I'm going to copy this down, so those have to be absolute, because I don't want my table moving. And I'm going to return column 2, and that is false. Now, I could have named this table city mileage or something like that, and not used the table array and used the table's name. So if you choose to do that, like I said, that's a good way of doing it. All right, and we've got our function now. I'm going to go ahead and say OK. And got the mileage rate, got the amount I'm going to get reimbursed for it, and we'll just copy that down. Is that right? Miles to Borger is 102. Yep, round trip. Miles to Dumas. Okay, got them all. Looks like that's good to go. And let's look into this last one here on the functions, lookup functions, is what's called HLOOKUP. Now, VLOOKUP was a vertical lookup. The V stood for vertical, meaning up and down, meaning my data was in my columns, right? You know, that I'm going to go look at something in a column. An HLOOKUP works the exact same way, only this time my data exists across the row. So it's a horizontal lookup is what HLOOKUP stands for. Okay, so in this instance, it says we're going to use an appropriate function in cell C5 here to find Mark's commission rate. Okay, so the commission rate is based on the amount of sales. So Mark sold 168,000. Well, 168,000 doesn't exist up here. So this is going to be one of those times where we need the system to go up and say, okay, give me the closest one without going, you know, to the next one. So if he has 168,000, that means he's kind of in here, which means his percentage rate should be 7%. Okay, just so you kind of know what we're looking for. All right, so I'm going to look up HLOOKUP. So I'm going to insert my function, and it's going to be an HLOOKUP, because it's going to be a horizontal lookup. I know that because it tells me down there to do it, but I also know it because it's in rows. and say okay. Now, what am I looking up? I need to look up the amount that he made. In this instance, his sales total. Okay, where am I looking it up at? Okay, just like I did before, I don't want to take my titles over here. Just going to take my data. I'm going to look it up from B1 through G2. So B1 through G2. That needs to be absolute because I'm going to copy this across down the rest of the columns. So I'm going to make that absolute. Make that an absolute reference. Now, row index number is just like column index number. In this instance, I'm looking up information in the first row. I'm bringing back information in the second row. I could have additional information here. I could bring back information from the 5th row or from the 8th row, whatever my table had. These are simple examples with just a couple of columns or a couple of rows, but you recognize that you might have additional rows there. In this instance, that range lookup that we've been doing, I've been typing false because I wanted an exact value. But in this one, I don't have it, so I'm going to go ahead and tell it true. Even though it defaults to true, I like to go ahead and just be consistent with that. Okay, so his commission rate is 7%. Now let's see if that works for the rest of them. All right, 112,000 should be 5%. Yep, 143,000 should be 6%. Yep, looks like it worked. Good deal. Now it says in column D, calculate the commission amount, which is the sales times the rate. So it's just going to be a formula equals sales times, use our asterisk, rate. And that's going to change as my rows go down. So any of those I need to make sure are relative references. And all right, and I always hit escape to get out of it. All right, let me see how much more I have left here. I think I just have, I think I'm going to go ahead and finish this video with these, and so this will be the last video that we work with. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at date functions. Date functions are awesome. There's lots of neat things in Excel that work with date functions. I told you in the first set of Excel videos I did that dates are always done as numbers, and here's an example of how those numbers are. So the very first number is January 1st, 1900. Okay, so there's different functions that we use to calculate some date information. It says, how many days are there between the start and end of the course? In this course, when this spreadsheet was built, was in 19, but we can take from the start date to the finish date, okay? So to get that, we'll use the function called days. So I'm going to go and insert my function and get my function that's called days. Okay, and what days does is it says it returns the number of days between two dates. Okay, so the first thing we have to have is our end date. Okay, there's our end date. And then our start date is going to be our, in this instance, the October date minus the August date. And there were 52 days in that term. Okay. Neat feature called now. I'm just going to type that one and show you now, and then close it with the open close parenthesis. It actually will bring back the exact date and time listed on your computer. So I'm making this video on February 10th, 2021 at 13:27. So that's exactly right, okay? It'll update if you refresh the screen, it will update to that current time. So it's a changing value, okay? This one says how many work days are in the month of February 2020. Okay, so let's take a look at that. February 2020 was a leap year, so we're going to use net work days, and not network, it's net work days, meaning the number of days that we had in a given month. Okay, and returns the number of whole work days between any two dates. Okay, so in this instance, our start date is February 1st, and our end date would be February 29th. And then if you had any holidays, a number of serial date values or something you could put in. For instance, if you work for a bank, you might take out President's Day or something like that. But in this instance, we're not going to put any of those holidays in. And so there were 20 work days in that month. All right. And then here we have today's date. Today's date's another one that just does not have any arguments. It only uses the open and close parenthesis. So today, again, February 10th. Okay, what day of the week is fall commencement on? In this particular year, our fall commencement was on December 20th of 2019. So this weekday here, what weekday does for us is it brings back what day of the week a particular day fell on. Okay, and it says, identifies it from 1 to 7. Okay, and so our serial number here, which one we're going to, is the number that represents the date. So it's going to be our C19. And then the return type, it says what it's a number for Sunday 1 through Saturday. You use 1. For Monday through Sunday, use 2. For Monday through Sunday, use 3. So in this instance, we want to return the kind of the standard. So we want to return 1. So it looks like it was on the 6th day, which was a Friday. Not surprising. And you can even have an if statement here where it says if it returns this value, or you could have a VLOOKUP where it went and looked it up and returned actually Friday instead of the number 6. So that would be another way you could use those date functions. All of those date functions are going to be sitting here under date and time. There's a lot more of them there. And you can go ahead and you could hover your cursor over them and it would tell you kind of what each of them does. But there's quite a few of them out there. There's even more than even what's in those quick lists. Okay, let's look at text functions. Text functions are neat. They let you change the text string. So here it says we can use the upper function to convert this to uppercase. So we're going to say equals upper. And I'm going to open the parenthesis and close it. And it's, basically what we're going to do is, I'll show you what that looks like. And basically it says, which text do you want to make uppercase? I want to make that text uppercase. And say OK. And it automatically made it all uppercase. Okay. Another text function is called proper. And I show you guys lots of ways to get to them here. So proper. Go in and we can get that one. And the proper function makes whatever text field you're looking at proper noun. And we get Amarillo College with both capital A and capital C. The right function basically lets you take the certain number of digits from the right side of the text string. Okay, so we're going to take the right function, and it says which text are we looking at, and then how many characters do we want to look at. It says we want to look at only the year, so that would be how many characters does the year have? It has 4, and so now I can return just the year. Okay, the left function does the same thing. In this instance, it will take just a certain number of the text string, and so we'll do left, and this time I'll just show you guys what that looks like. And it says here, in our left, what text do we want? And I'm going to take a 5. And how many characters do I want? And it says I need a comma. And I'm going to take just the first 3 characters because we usually do months by the number of first 3 characters. Okay. And that brought back the furthest left 3 letters. Okay. Lower function takes all the text to lowercase letters. Okay. So we take equals, lower. And we're going to take all of these guys to lowercase. And you can see it did that for us. And this one takes out any extra spaces. This is trim. The trim function is great, especially if you're copying something from somewhere else and you end up with a lot of extra spaces. Trim is a really neat function for Excel. And it'll take out all those extra spaces. So that's kind of a neat function too. All right, let's go on to our payment function. And we briefly talked about the payment function back over in the front. But what the payment function does for you is it lets you calculate the monthly payment for an item that has a fixed interest rate and consistent payments over time. So in this instance, what is the monthly payment of this particular car? So we've got a car purchase, we have an annual percentage rate, we've got a down payment, and we've got a loan term. Okay, so kind of how long the loan is going to last. So the payment function, just so you know, those text functions were here in text. The payment functions here under financial Again, a lot of times if you know which one it is, in this instance we're going to use the PMT function. So I'm going to say PMT, and it calculates the payment for a loan based on constant payments and a constant interest rate, which is how most car payments are set up. Okay, now rate. It says this is the interest rate per period of the loan. Hang on one second. I've got an issue with my mouse isn't working. Just 1 second. Sorry about that. I had to change the battery in my mouse. Okay, so the rate right here, it says interest rate per period of the loan, and it says period. That's a very important word for you. It says, for example, use 6% divided by 4 if you're doing quarterly payments for an annual percentage rate. So you need to understand a little bit about your data. In this instance, we're supposed to be calculating the monthly payment. So a monthly payment, but we're given an annual percentage rate. So you're going to need to make sure that when you're doing the rate that you divide that by 12. Okay? So our rate in this instance is going to be our annual percentage rate divided by 12. Okay? So that's going to make sure that you're not charging too much, that your monthly payments aren't too much. Okay? Your number of NPER is the total number of payments for the loan. Okay? It stands for number of periods, meaning how many periods am I paying? Okay? So in this instance, we always calculate that as our number of years times however many payments we have within a year. So in this instance, that would be 12. Okay? If it were quarterly, it would be 4. If it were semi-annually, it would be 2. So it kind of just depends on how that particular one works out for whichever loan you're working with. Okay. The present value is the total amount that a series of future payments is worth now. What does that mean? Well, it really means, what am I borrowing? Okay. What is it that the bank's giving me? What am I financing? What's the amount financed would be another way to say it. In this instance, I have a down payment, okay? So I'm going to say equals my purchase price minus my down payment, okay? Now, I don't need the equals there. Sorry about that. So you just need the the purchase price minus the down payment, okay? These last two down here, you probably won't use much. Future value is where if you had a balloon payment, like you were paying it off, but then at the very end you had a $5,000 payment for the last amount, you could put that amount here and it would calculate payments with that being there. And then the type is, we typically just leave that blank because it's at the end of the period. Most banks do their interest at the end of the period. It'll say specifically in all of the paperwork if they're going to do it at the beginning of the period. And if it's at the beginning of the period, you put a 1. But typically, most of these loans are going to be done with end of period interest. Okay. Now, let's say okay. And it says negative 401. It's negative because it's from the perspective of cash flow. So it's negative cash flow for you. So if you want to make that a positive, just come up here where it says payment and put a negative in right there before the payment. And that's usually the easiest way to make that a positive number for you to look at. Now, let's say I got a more expensive car. Okay, how much did that change my payment? What if I can put more money down? How does that change my payment? What if I extend the term of the loan? How did that change my payment? What if I get a better interest rate? How did that change my payment? So all of these different items can change that monthly payment. Those are your 4 biggies. What's the cost of the car? How much can I put down? What's my interest rate, and how long am I paying? And that can get you, kind of how you can get to that monthly payment information. Really, it's that simple. You can really calculate these out very quickly if you're interested in going and buying a car. This works for a house, $175,000 home. Okay, and I'm going to put down $20,000. Okay, and I'm going to say I can get a loan for 2.2, probably less than that right now, and the length of the term is 30 years. Okay, my mortgage payment's $588. Okay, so that would be the way that you would, could do that as well. This works the same way for car, because mortgages and car payments typically are on what's called a fixed interest rate. There are some types of mortgages that have an adjustable rate mortgage, but in general, that's what we use. So I'm going to take those back to their original values, guys. So you've got that. Okay. Now, let's see what it says. Create a reference to cell D4. I want to tell you, sometimes when it says creating a reference, all that means is equals D4. Not, okay? It just means create a reference means that's the cell reference. Okay? Create a reference to the down payment amount. Okay? What that means is we come up and we click on that value. That just means reference that particular value. Create a reference to the monthly payment amount. Okay? Just going to go up here. We're going to click on it. Okay? So I can create references very easily. Just get in your mind that when it talks about a reference, it just means referencing a particular cell. Okay, and then the last one we're going to work on here is another payment function, and it says loan payments under different scenarios. Okay, this would be important for you to figure out kind of what if you had an annual percentage rate and what the different amounts you might have to pay would be. Okay, so this is going to be a payment function. We'll do, actually, I'll just know that it's been in the recently used. Okay, what's my interest rate? Okay, in this instance, I've got an APR of 2.75. Okay, that's going to change as I copy this across. Okay, and I'm going to divide that by my monthly, because I'm paying it on a monthly basis. I'm going to divide that by 12. But in this instance, I need to make sure that 12 is absolute. I don't want the annual percentage rate to be absolute because that's going to change, but I want that 12 to be absolute. What are my number of periods? Okay, my loan amount is going to be equal to 30. That's not changing, so I make that absolute, times 12, and that's not changing. I'm going to make that absolute. Okay, and I've done something wrong. C3 times C5. Oh, I've got the equals in there. I don't know why I put that equals in. Sorry, guys. Oh, yes, too few arguments for the function. So let's go back into our dialog box. There we go. It needs to have the amount I'm going to borrow. Okay, and the amount I'm going to borrow is going to be 100,000, and that's not going to change. That's going to stay the same. So in this one, only thing that's changing is that annual percentage rate right here, where I've got C8. So it's going to change to D8, E8, F8 as we go across. All right, let's go ahead and put that in. Again, we've got a negative there, so I'm going to go ahead and make that a negative. And then we've got positive values going across. And then I'm going to copy that and move it across. Oops, right there. And now you can see the higher the interest rate, the higher the payment. And so that makes sense. The higher our interest rate, the higher our payment would be. For that same loan amount, a difference in 1.25% interest, it's about $70 a month. So hopefully that kind of helps you guys see a little bit about all the different functions. I spent a lot of time on this because this is really kind of a key point in how to use Excel. So this file will be available for you out in the folder in week 4.